I forgot to start recording. Darn it. Okay. I'll catch back up to what I was talking about. I forgot to hit record. But how would I find this term here?
You subtract 4.
You would subtract 4. So 7 minus 4 would be 3, and that's where they got that 3. So in this case, when we're talking about arithmetic, remember, I'm going to rewrite this because I forgot to hit record. Arithmetic is when you add or subtract. It's the same number every time. The number that you add or subtract every time is your common difference. And you'll see that in a second. We're going to work through some of these, and you guys will be like, oh, this is pretty easy. I like this. In this case right here, this is just written differently. If you want to rewrite it where the n is at the beginning, you could rewrite this as negative 5n plus 7. Agreed? What's your common difference? What is this sequence doing every single time?
Subtracting 5.
It's subtracting 5. That's your common difference. And then that was the starting point. So if you have this sequence here, you can do this math, or you can just look at it in your head and say, okay, how did I get from one number to the next? How did I get from 2 to negative 3? Well, I subtracted 5. How did I get from negative 3 to negative 8? I subtracted 5. How did I get from 8 to negative 8 to negative? I subtracted 5, right? So that would be your common difference. Subtract 5 every time. And then how did you get this piece right here, your y-intercept? Well, instead of subtracting 5, how do you go backwards? You'd add 5. So 2 plus 5 gives me 7. So that's where that 7 comes from. Make sense? All right, let's do a couple. You guys are going to see, and I'll post all these notes. You're going to see this formula. It's the exact same thing that I'm talking about. It's just, again, my internet says it's unstable again. So it's a little different. I'll show you both ways. But this formula is probably what you would see on like the SAT and stuff like that. But also I'll take answers in either way. But this a sub 1 is the first term that they gave you. N is just the letter, the term number. And D is your common difference. So I'll work this out both ways. I'll show you what I mean. Some of you are going to like one way better than the other. And that's okay. That's totally fine. All right. So you have A sub n equals a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times d. Okay, that's the formula that they give you. So you can look. We're going to look at this two different ways. They tell you in this problem that the common difference is 3, so d is 3, and the first term that you have is 2. Right? You guys agree with me? So if you use this formula here, you just plug in 2 for a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times 3. Now we have to, we can't leave it like this. We have to FOIL it out. So if I multiply here and here, I have 2 plus 3n minus 3. Yes? Okay. Then if I combine 2 and negative 3, what does that give me?
Negative 1.
So you would have 3n minus 1. That's your rule. And if I said to you, okay, well, what's the 500th term? You would tell me, okay, this is it. Make sense? Okay. You could also look at it this way. If they tell you that the first term, if they tell you that this first term is 2, and they tell you the common difference is 3, if they tell you the first term is 2 and the common difference is 3, well, 2 plus 3 is what? 5. Plus 3 is 8. Plus 3 is 11. Okay, so what would my 0 term be?
Negative 1.
Right, because I go backwards if I minus 3. So you could write it this way as well. You could say that your common difference is 3, and then that 0 term is minus 1. You get the same answer. And sometimes that's depending on what they give you. If they just give you this information, they tell you that the first term is 2 and the common difference is 3, it's really easy to just throw it in here. It's when they give you a sequence of numbers that makes it a little more difficult to do it with this equation. So you'll see either way. Francisco, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. Nope, no more on this page. Okay. When they give you specific things like the term number is this, okay? So if let's just write down what they say. They tell me that the fourth term is 20. So a sub 4 equals 20, right? And the 13th term, so a 13 is 65. Write the first several terms of this sequence. How am I going to go about this, right? These two pieces of information are super important. And we're going to talk more about this as we go through, I promise. But what is the distance between these two numbers? I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. What is the distance here between these two numbers? How many spaces are between 4 and 13?
9.
There's 9 spaces.
Or 9.
Okay. You're talking about the spaces in between the places of the numbers, not the actual like the value of the number themselves. There's 9 spaces in between. So in order to figure out the rule of this first, you have to figure out the rule first. You would put the larger term, meaning the furthest one away, out in front, and then the other term here. I'm lagging, I know, I'm sorry. And then you would I'm putting plus 9D because I don't know what the common difference is yet. But I'm going to put plus. Why am I putting plus? Because the numbers are getting bigger or smaller? If I go from 20 to 65, is that number getting bigger or smaller? So let me start off again. They gave us these two things, right? They gave us the 4th term is 20. They gave us the 13th term is 65. The difference between those two numbers, not the value, but the difference of those two numbers is 9 spaces. Okay? When you're trying to find out the rule and then the first several terms, you have to work this problem out this way. The further one away goes on the outside here. The closer one goes here. And the how many spaces away is where I got the 9 from. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's just fill in the information we have. So the 13th term is 65. The 4th term is 20 plus 9 times D. We're trying to find the common difference. So I would do what to both sides?
You would subtract 20.
Subtract 20 from both sides. So I get 45 equals 9D. Divide both sides by 9. And D equals 5. Right? So our common difference is 5. So if I was going to write a rule, A sub n equals 5n.
Oh.
That's where I got that from. So now there's a couple different ways that you can figure this out. If you want this right here, we have to figure out if there's anything that goes with this. That's our 0 term. So let's just think about what they gave us. 1, 2, 3, 4. They gave me the 4th term was what number?
20.
20. All right, I need to know this 0 term here. That's what goes in this little box. So how would I figure out if 20 was the 4th term and it's going up by 5 every time? Well, what's the 3rd term then?
It's 15.
15. Then what's the 2nd term?
10.
What's the 1st term?
5.
So what's our 0 term?
0.
That's right there. So this would be plus 0. So your rule would just be A sub n equals
5n.
5n. And then you can check that. You could say, well, is that right? Well, if it's right, our 13th term should be what number?
65.
So plug in 65. Plug in 13 right there. What's 5 times 13?
65.
65. So we know that our rule's right. Just a little. It's like solving a puzzle a little bit. But these, when you guys have this on WebAssign, just refer to this part of the notes because it's going to be the same way every time. You're counting the spaces in between, that sort of thing, because you got to solve for D first. I'll give you some more on how to write the rule. All right, find the 9th term of the arithmetic sequence whose first 2 terms are 2 and 9. All right, so first we got to find the rule. So my first term is 2. My second term is 9, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So then let me rewrite this question. So 2, 9, hold on, write this out. Okay, I want you guys on this one to find the 54th term. Okay, find the 54th term. So there's a couple things you can do here. you can figure out, what are we doing? How do we get from 2 to 9? What'd I do?
Add 7.
I added 7. How'd I get from 9 to 16?
Add 7.
Add 7.
How'd I get from 16 to 23?
Add 7.
Add 7. So would you guys agree that the common difference is 7? I'm going up 7 every time. That's my slope.
Uh-huh.
Now, this is my
Yep.
first term. This is my second, the third, the fourth. If you guys didn't know how to write the rule, and this was a multiple choice test, and I wasn't saying, show me the rule, make sure you know how to do it, you could just add 7 50 more times, right, to get the 54th term? But who has time for that? Who wants to do that? Nobody, right? So, to find...
Multiply 54 by 7.
No, it's not multiply.
Oh, right.
You have to add to this. You gotta add 7 to each preceding number. So if you want to find this number here, this 0 term, all right, you could say, okay, what is my 0 term? Well, if I'm adding 7 every time, how would I go 1 backwards?
Subtract 7.
I'd subtract 7. So I'd have 2 minus 7 is
Negative 5.
-5. So there is my rule, guys. If I told you to write the rule and then find the 54th term, so there's your rule. And then in order to find the 54th term, you would say a sub 54 equals 7 times 54 minus 5. And 7 times 54 is 378 minus 5. The 54th term
Or 373.
is 373. Now at the beginning, I showed you another formula. You could use this formula too. A sub n equals the first term plus n minus 1 times d, right? Well, what was the first term in this sequence? They told me the first term was what? Correct. The first term is 2 plus n minus 1 times what was the common difference? 7. So in order to find this rule, I would say 2 plus, I got to distribute the 7. So 7n minus 7. A sub n equals 7n. What's a positive 2 and a negative 7?
Negative 5.
Negative 5. Did we get the same thing?
Yep.
Right? Okay. So you do it either way. I don't like doing... A lot of times I see if you guys do it this way, you mess up here when you distribute. Or here, where you're not paying attention to your signs. See that? Okay. All right, let's scoot. Okay, if you're finding the sum of a finite arithmetic sequence, finite means it has an end point, correct? If we have an end point, finite means it ends. Sum means we add them all together. Yesterday we talked about finding the sums, and you had the sigma notation, looked something like this. You had a number on top, a number on the bottom. They gave you an expression here, yes? All right, so today we're going to look at it. They're not giving me any expression. They're just giving me a whole bunch of numbers. Now, obviously, I know all of you can add those numbers in a calculator and tell me what the sum is. But I'm not asking you a question about that. I'm asking you to please figure out using this formula. And here's the formula. All right, here's your formula. N, what does N stand for again? Okay, that's going to be our what? Number of terms? Okay, number of terms. What do you think? What do you think A sub 1 is? The first term. What do you think A sub n is?
The number.
The last term. So if I'm going to find the sum here, I'm going to say, okay, the partial sum of this finite series. How many terms am I looking at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Agreed? Yes? So it's 10 divided by 2. And then I have, what's my first term? 1. Plus, what's the last term? 19. All right, then we just simplify. So I have 10 divided by 2 is? Times, what's 1 plus 19?
20.
So this sum of this series, that is finite arithmetic series, is
100.
100. Now, could you have also found that by just adding all those numbers together? Yes, but a lot of times they'll give you something like this. They'll say, find the sum of the series. They'll say 1 plus 3 plus 5, and then it'll go ... 217. So you could sit with your calculator, 1 plus 3 plus 5 plus 7, or you could say, okay, here's my first term, here's the last term, how many terms are in there, that sort of thing. Make sense? One more example. So let's go through here. Partial sum. Find the 150 partial sum of this arithmetic sequence. You guys are like, Anybody have an idea?
We can find
We're adding 11.
the sequence.
Okay, I like it. The first thing you're gonna do is say, wait, what's the rule here? What am I doing every time?
Adding 11.
I'm adding 11. I like it.
Yep.
Now, I could use this, right? What's my first term?
5.
N minus 1 times D. So I have my first term is 5 plus N minus 1 times what? What's D?
11.
11. So I have
Distribute.
5 plus 11N minus 11.
And then that's what? Negative 9.
11N.
Negative
6. Yeah.
All right. There's another way I could do that, right? I showed you guys another way you can do it if you like it better. This is my first, second, third, fourth. So this is my 0 term. So if instead of adding 11, I do what? Subtract 11. 5 minus 11 is negative 6. Is that the same thing we got there?
Yeah.
Good. Very good. Okay, so we found the rule. That's a good starting point.
Now we find the 150th.
Find the 150th partial sum. Well, how do I find the 150th term? I don't know what that term is, but how do I find it?
You plug it in.
I'm going to plug it in. I'm going to find the 150th term. So 11 times 150 minus 6. What's 11 times 150?
1,650.
Yep, and then I'm going to minus 6.
1644.
1644. All right. Okay. Find the 150th partial sum. Well, now what?
Well,
I know what the rule is. I know what the 150th term is. So now what do? What's that formula we just used?
The S of n.
Okay, so S of n equals the number of terms we have divided by 2. And then what? First term plus the
first term plus second
last term.
Second.
Right?
Yep.
Okay, so how many terms are we talking about?
150.
There's 150. What is the first term of this sequence?
5.
5. What is the last term of this sequence?
160.
1644. Good. Very good, guys. So now I take 150, divide by 2, and I get
75.
75 times, what's 5?
1649.
Plus 1649? Okay, so the sum, the 150th, the sum of the first 150 numbers of this sequence is what?
100,023.
That number I can't do in my head.
123,675.
I'm not very good at reading. Here we go. There you go.
All right, so in this case, guys, you could not have just taken your calculator and gone, okay, I'm going to just understand that I'm adding 11 every time, and I have the first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you did this by hand, you would then have to add 11
150 or
145 more times, and then add all those numbers together. So in a case like this, when they tell you, okay, here's the sum, this is what I want you to find, this is what you have to do. You have to actually go through and say, okay, here is the rule, here is the term number, And then here's the formula that I'm using to find it. Does that make sense? Okay. It's your web assigned is not due until next Wednesday because I don't see you guys until Wednesday. So if you have questions, go ahead.